When we think of Zeus, one image comes to mind: the mighty god of thunder on Mount Olympus, holding a lightning bolt and ruling the heavens with unmatched power. He is the king of gods, master of storms, the unshakable force of the sky, shaping destinies and guiding the world with a single gesture. But is that the whole story of Zeus? Behind thunder and lightning lies another side, a quieter, hidden face that ancient myths only whisper about in fragments and shadows. This hidden face is shaped not only by strength, but by the heavy weight of responsibility, and by the countless prayers of mortals seeking hope. It is not carved in marble or sung about in songs of victory, but it exists in silence, in choices, and in moments when mercy matters more than thunder. It lives in the pauses, where Zeus listens instead of speaks, and in the spaces where compassion carries as much power as the storm. In this journey, we will uncover that hidden side, and explore Zeus not only as a god, but as a figure of depth, wisdom, and humanity. Because even the king of Olympus carries a story untold. High above the clouds, where mortal eyes could only dream to reach, stood Mount Olympus, a mountain crowned with mist and light, carved as if from the sky itself. At its hidden summit rose the palace of the gods, gleaming beyond storms and veils of cloud, and at its heart stood a throne brighter than gold, glowing with divine radiance. Upon this throne sat Zeus, king of the gods, master of the skies, keeper of order and balance, whose presence reached across heaven, earth, and sea alike. The throne was not simply a seat of power, but a symbol of harmony, the center that bound the divine and mortal worlds together in fragile unity. From this high place, Zeus surveyed the realms below, oceans rolling endlessly, rivers winding like silver threads, and mountains rising proud into the sky. Every storm, every ray of sunlight, every whisper of wind carried his unseen presence, a reminder of his dominion and the promise of his protection. To mortals, Zeus was both a warning and a comfort, a god whose thunder could strike fear, yet whose justice could bring peace and order. Imagine the throne room of Olympus. Columns of white stone carved with eagles and stars, shimmering with eternal flame, alive with the songs of the muses. Other gods moved through the great hall, their voices echoing, but it was Zeus who anchored it all, steady and majestic, the son of Olympus. To look upon him on his throne was to see the embodiment of the sky itself, vast and unshakable, yet burdened by a hidden weight. For the throne was not easily won, nor lightly held. It carried the responsibility of guiding gods, mortals, and the endless balance of fate. At times, the throne was a place of solitude, where Zeus sat in silence, listening to the countless prayers rising from the fragile world below. Farmers prayed for rain, sailors begged for calm seas, kings asked for victory, and each voice rose upward, landing softly upon the throne of Zeus. He listened, not always with thunder, not always with wrath, but with the quiet judgment of a ruler who weighed hope against consequence. The throne also reminded the gods of Olympus that their powers, though great, were bound to Zeus's seat, where disputes ended and oaths were sworn. It shone as the eternal flame of order, yet behind its glory lay a truth. The highest seat was also the loneliest. Power dazzled, but it isolated. Every storm carried a cost, and every judgment left its mark upon Zeus's heart. Mortals saw the brilliance of Olympus, the throne of lightning, but not the hidden stillness where Zeus pondered justice, not power. The paradox of the throne was clear. The brightest seat in the heavens was also the heaviest, yet Zeus accepted it with steadfast duty. He rose above not from vanity, but from necessity, because guiding the world meant bearing storms both in the sky and within himself. So the throne of Olympus gleamed eternal, bathed in sunlight and storm, a symbol of divine rule, yet also of sacrifice and solitude. And in that throne, more than thunder and might, lived the hidden face of Zeus, a god whose strength was shaped as much by silence as by storm. When people think of Zeus, they imagine thunder splitting the sky and a blazing bolt of lightning flashing from his hand. It is the most iconic image of Zeus, a symbol of raw force, swift judgment, and divine spectacle that mortals could not ignore. Yet that thunderbolt, dazzling as it is, shows only one side of Zeus, the side easiest to see, to tell, and to remember in stories. But what lies beyond the lightning? To answer that, we must step away from the storm, for Zeus's true measure is not captured in a single flash across the clouds. The thunderbolt is real. Yes, it shaped myths, inspired awe, and reminded mortals of divine presence with fire and sound. But there is a subtler power within Zeus, hidden in silence and stillness, found in choices not written in lightning. It is the power of patience, of listening, of knowing when to hold back the storm instead of unleashing it. This, perhaps, is the Zeus that few ever speak of, the side of a god that lives in restraint as much as in force. Imagine skies without thunder, without storm. The air is calm, the horizon clear, and yet Zeus is still there, shaping the world in quieter ways. Beyond thunder and lightning, Zeus was a god of counsel, hearing other deities and weighing their voices with steady wisdom. The myths tell us of his thunderbolts, but not of his silences, moments when fate rested on reflection, not on force. Even among the immortals, he was patient, waiting for the right moment rather than striking too soon. It is easy to call down thunder. It is far harder to hold it back until the world truly needs it, and that restraint is part of his hidden face. Mortals heard storms and thought, "The god is angry." But how many noticed the gift of calm skies when thunder was withheld? That restraint was a gift as mighty as the thunderbolt itself. Think of the seasons, the slow turning of spring, summer, autumn, and winter, ordered and steady under Zeus's unseen hand. The hidden Zeus is in that order, in the gentle rains that nourish, not only in the storms that strike fear. He is in the sunrise that warms the day, not only in the lightning that lights the night with fire. To see Zeus clearly is to see both the storm and the calm, the thunder and the silence, the force and the balance. Because true power lies not only in display, but also in restraint, in the choice not to strike. The myths spoke loudly of thunder, but they told only half the story of Zeus's rule and wisdom. The other half rests in still skies, in patience, in the quiet strength of balance. This is where the hidden face of Zeus begins to shine, less in thunder, more in wisdom. A god not only of storms, but of silence. Not only of force, but of balance. Not only of lightning, but of patience. When we look beyond thunder and lightning, we see Zeus as more than a ruler with a weapon. We see him as a guide, a listener, a guardian, shaping the world through balance as much as through awe. And perhaps this is the greatest strength, to hold thunder in his hand and still choose not to let it fall. To sit on the throne of Olympus was not only to wield power, but to hold the balance of heaven and earth in one hand and the fragile trust of gods and mortals in the other. For Zeus, true leadership was never just about thunderbolts or displays of strength, but about judgment, constant, demanding, and impossible to escape. Each day, countless voices reached him, carried by smoke and wind. Mortals prayed below, while gods debated in Olympus, all seeking his ear, his favor, and his decision. Farmers begged for rain to nourish their fields. Sailors prayed for calm seas to guide their ships. Kings asked for victory, while poets sought only the gift of inspiration. To all of them, Zeus was more than a distant figure. He was the one who must listen, weigh, and decide what was just, even when justice meant sacrifice. The burden of leadership is heavy, for every choice brings consequence. A storm saving one land from drought may flood another. A blessing to some, but a curse to others. Zeus understood that balance always came with sacrifice. The skies could not please all at once, so he bore the weight of choice in silence, without complaint. At dawn, Olympus was still, the clouds drifting as mortals raised their eyes, waiting for a sign, a gesture, a whisper of the will of their unseen king. Often Zeus sat in patience, watching, thinking deeply before acting. For wisdom often comes not in haste, but in the silence between storms. Yet the wait remained. Leadership meant listening to every voice, knowing each prayer granted meant another unanswered. Each gift balanced by denial. Even the gods themselves turned to him. Their quarrels rang loud, but Zeus was the one to judge, the one to bind oaths, and set the limits they could not cross. Ruling gods was perhaps harder than ruling mortals, for immortals are proud, fierce, and unwilling to bow. Yet they bent to Zeus, for he was both fair and unshakable. To Zeus, leadership was not glory, it was labor, endless vigilance, endless judgment, and the careful weaving of order against the pull of chaos. This was the hidden weight of the throne, unseen by mortals who noticed only thunder, but never the silence that came before. Where choices were truly made, mortals mistook lightning for anger, thunder for punishment. Few understood it was also warning, protection, or a balance struck for the greater good. Zeus did not defend himself against their misunderstanding. To lead is often to be feared more than loved, respected more than understood. He carried the weight not as a crown of pride, but as a mantle of duty. To guide the world, someone had to accept the burden, and Zeus chose to bear it. Perhaps in quiet hours, he wondered if mortals could ever see the hidden cost of his role, that leadership is as much sacrifice as it is power. The storms, the rains, the sunlight, none were random. They were his answers, written across the sky in a language few understood, but all depended on. To lead is to decide. To decide is to sacrifice. To sacrifice is to carry both gratitude and blame, blessing and resentment, in equal measure. Zeus carried it all. The prayers of mortals, the disputes of gods, the endless duty to hold balance between chaos and order. That was his true test. More than the thunderbolt, more than the storm. This was his greatest burden, the weight of leadership and the weight of Olympus itself. When people think of Zeus, they imagine the ruler of Olympus, standing apart from all others, untouchable and sovereign. Yet even gods are bound by family. From the beginning, family shaped his destiny. Born the youngest child of Cronus and Rhea, Zeus entered a world scarred by betrayal, fear, and the shadow of his father's rule. Cronus, afraid of losing his throne, swallowed his children one by one. Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon vanished into darkness, silenced before their lives could bloom. But Rhea, weary of loss, defied him. She wrapped a stone in swaddling clothes and tricked Cronus. He swallowed it without question, while Zeus was hidden far from danger. On Crete, nymphs guarded the child. The god Amalthea fed him, and the Curetes clashed their shields to drown his cries. In secrecy, the future king grew in strength. His bond with family began not through presence, but through absence. His siblings, swallowed and silenced, were his first responsibility, long before he ever met them again. When Zeus grew strong, he returned. With cunning and Metis' help, he forced Cronus to release his brothers and sisters. From captivity they rose, united by pain and hope. Together, they shaped Olympus. 6 siblings, once broken, now stood as pillars of the cosmos, each holding a domain, each carrying the weight of order and destiny. Hestia tended the hearth. Demeter nurtured the earth. Poseidon ruled the seas. Hades kept the underworld. Hera became guardian of marriage. And Zeus claimed the sky. Yet family is never simple. Power brought rivalries and resentments. Hera, his sister, and later his wife, clashed with him, her pride as fierce as his authority. Poseidon, proud master of the seas, sometimes rose against Zeus, his waves testing the sky. Hades kept his distance, ruling shadows with stern independence. But when greater threats arose, unity held them together. Giants and monsters were met not alone, but side by side, for their shared bond was stronger than division. Zeus never forgot what division cost under Cronus. He knew Olympus could only endure if family ties were preserved, even strained, even tested, never fully broken. Despite his flaws, Zeus often acted as more than king. He was brother, son, and guardian, carrying his family not only in rule, but in care and memory. He comforted Demeter in her grief for Persephone, supported Poseidon in his struggles, and respected Hestia's quiet devotion. In these moments, power became tenderness. The hidden face of Zeus shines most in kinship. Even the king of gods could not stand alone. His strength was shaped by the bonds of family, both blessing and burden. He bore the memory of Cronus's cruelty, carrying the duty never to repeat it. He kept peace among siblings, even when pride threatened to tear them apart. Love, complex and fierce, tied them together not just as rulers, but as survivors. Their bond gave Olympus its foundation, and Zeus became keeper of that bond. So when we see Zeus crowned in storms, let us remember also the brother who freed his kin, the son who ended tyranny, and the guardian of sacred ties. Even gods, even kings, are never truly alone. They are bound, as we are, by the threads of family, fragile, unyielding, and eternal. When mortals looked at the sky, they did not only see storms. They also saw justice, carried in the hand of Zeus, the one who listened and judged. Zeus was more than the king of Olympus. He was the guardian of laws, the protector of oaths, and the keeper of balance between gods and mortals. In every city and sacred grove, people called upon him not just for rain or sunlight, but for fairness. They prayed he would hear their cries against corruption, betrayal, or dishonor. To break an oath was to offend Zeus. To abuse hospitality, to harm a guest under your roof, was to defy him. For Zeus was Xenios, protector of strangers and bonds of trust. Mortals believed no lie went unnoticed, no betrayal unheard. Somewhere in Olympus, Zeus saw, Zeus knew, and Zeus weighed every deed. Justice was not always swift. Sometimes it came in silence, delayed until the moment was right. For Zeus did not strike blindly. He measured carefully before acting. Themis, goddess of divine law, often stood by his side. Together they embodied the order that bound heaven and earth. Through her wisdom and his authority, justice found its shape. But justice is never simple. Mortals hoped for fairness, but fairness often meant one pleased, another angered. To Zeus, true justice was balance, not popularity. When a king oppressed his people, Zeus was invoked. When a guest was wronged, Zeus was called. When the weak cried out against the strong, it was his thunder they trusted. This role was the most hidden part of his reign. Mortals saw storms, but not the weighing, the restraint, the patience behind decisions. For justice without restraint is vengeance, and vengeance without wisdom is chaos. Zeus carried the burden of knowing the difference. Sometimes the hardest justice was mercy, to spare when punishment was expected, to forgive when wrath was deserved. These were also choices of a ruler. In those moments, mortals saw a glimpse of his hidden face. Not the storm, not the strike, but the hand that held back, the voice that whispered patience. His justice lived in thunder and silence alike, not only in punishment, but in fairness heavier than any lightning bolt. This is why Zeus was more than a god of power. He was the god of order, the guardian of sacred bonds, the protector of trust. Without justice, Olympus would crumble. Without fairness, even gods would fall into endless strife. Justice was the thread that held the cosmos together, and Zeus held the thread. So when we look up at the storm, let us not see only anger. Let us see judgment. Let us see wisdom. Let us see the hidden face of justice, written across the sky by Zeus. In the ancient world, hospitality was more than courtesy. It was a sacred law, a golden thread binding stranger to host, guest to family, and mortal to God. At the heart of this tradition stood Zeus Xenios, protector of strangers. When a weary traveler knocked, the answer was not kindness alone. It was duty, commanded by Zeus himself. To offer food and shelter was not optional. It was sacred. To refuse was to risk angering the king of Olympus. But to welcome was to honor balance between mortals and gods. Stories told of Zeus testing mortals in disguise. He walked as a beggar, face hidden, cloak torn, or as a traveler seeking only bread and rest. Those who turned him away found ruin. Those who welcomed him gained blessings beyond gold. One tale shines brightest. Baucis and Philemon, an old couple, poor but kind, lived in a small hut. Two strangers arrived, weary from their journey. The couple welcomed them warmly. With what little they had, they served olives, bread, and a jug of wine. Each time they poured, the wine never ran dry. Then the truth revealed itself. They hosted gods. Zeus and Hermes stood before them in divine form. Their hut became a temple of marble and gold. The couple asked only to never be parted. At life's end, they became two trees side by side. Their love and kindness lived forever in legend. The story taught that hospitality was not wealth. It was generosity of spirit, even in poverty. But why did Zeus care so deeply for it? Because hospitality was trust made visible. It built peace between strangers and held communities together. To betray a guest was to betray Zeus himself. A guest under one's roof was untouchable. Even an enemy, offered bread and salt, was safe. This was the shield of Zeus Zenios, binding trust. For Greeks, hospitality was survival as much as virtue. Journeys were dangerous, roads long, and inns rare. Safety in a stranger's home could mean life. And so, before meals, doors, and shelter, Zeus was invoked. Every act of kindness became a small altar to him. But guests, too, carried sacred duty. They must respect the host's home and bring no harm. They must depart with gratitude and honor the bond. Hospitality was a covenant sealed by both sides. When kept, it created harmony. When broken, it brought chaos. And Zeus stood at the center, unseen but present. He was not only the storm bringer, but the quiet guardian, the god of doors, tables, and hearths. He reminded mortals that the divine hides in strangers, that every act of kindness reaches into eternity. This was the hidden face of Zeus Zenios. Among the many powers of Zeus, one of the most sacred was his role as the protector of oaths. In the ancient world, an oath was not just a promise. It was a bond spoken aloud, sealed by the witness of gods. To break an oath was not only dishonor, but a crime against divine order. Zeus stood as the eternal guardian of this sacred law. The Greeks believed every oath carried a spark of Zeus's fire. A soldier swore loyalty. A ruler pledged peace. A merchant promised fair trade. All invoked Zeus as witness, for his eyes missed nothing. The sky he ruled stretched over every corner of the earth. No word spoken beneath it escaped his notice. To swear falsely beneath Zeus was to call thunder upon oneself. The fear was not only punishment, but shame, the loss of honor. Without honor, one was less than human in Greek thought. Stories warned mortals of the danger of false oaths. Tantalus, a king once favored, betrayed the trust of the gods. He broke sacred bonds, and his punishment was eternal. Another tale told of Theseus and his friend Pirithous. They swore an oath of brotherhood before the gods, but ambition led them into sacred realms they should not enter. Their broken promises echoed louder than their bravery. Even kings and heroes could not escape Zeus's justice. Yet oaths were not always grand or tied to power. Sometimes they were quiet, personal, woven into daily life. A farmer might swear to share his harvest fairly. A neighbor might vow honesty in a land dispute. A lover might pledge faithfulness under the open sky. Every oath, great or small, rested in Zeus's hands. This revealed a hidden face of Zeus, the unseen witness, the patient listener, the keeper of human trust. Without trust, society, family, and kingdoms would collapse. The Greeks knew that without oaths, only chaos remained. And so, when disputes arose, men lifted their eyes to the heavens. They prayed Zeus would see truth and strike falsehood down. But Zeus did not rush to punish. He measured carefully, waiting for truth to unfold. Justice came slowly, sometimes years later. But the gods' patience was long, their memory eternal. Some believed Zeus marked oath-breakers with an unseen scar. Others believed liars destroyed themselves in time. The lesson was clear. A false oath carried its own curse. Here, Zeus's hidden face was not in thunder, but silence. Not in lightning, but in the quiet weight of words. He was the eternal witness, the God who made speech sacred. To swear falsely was to gamble with one's own soul, but to keep an oath, even at great cost, was true honor. Zeus was revered most as the keeper of oaths, because in his gaze, trust lived. Where trust lived, order stood strong. Where trust lived, honor endured. And where trust lived, the bond between mortals and gods held firm. This was the hidden face of Zeus, the keeper of promises, the guardian of every word ever sworn beneath the endless sky. Zeus often turned his gaze toward the mortal world. Though he ruled Olympus, his presence reached into valleys, cities, and seas. It was not only thunder that touched their days, but also his choices and desires. The stories of Zeus and mortals reveal a fragile thread between gods and humans. This thread was woven with power, longing, and consequences that shaped destinies. One tale tells of Europa, a maiden who wandered the shore of Phoenicia. Zeus approached her not with thunder, but disguised as a gentle bull. With calm eyes and a majestic form, he knelt before her on the sand. Europa, curious and fearless, climbed onto his back without hesitation. The bull leapt into the waves, carrying her across the wide sea. On Crete, Zeus revealed himself and gave her gifts beyond imagination. From Europa's line, kings would rise, and her name would live in nations. But not every story of Zeus and mortals shone with joy. Semele, princess of Thebes, was drawn into his powerful affection. She asked to see him in his full divine form, unmasked and bright. Yet the brilliance of Zeus was too great for mortal eyes to endure. Her story became a warning whispered through generations of seekers. The nearness of divinity can be wondrous, but also perilous to bear. To mortals, Zeus was never distant. He was both protector and unpredictable. He could bless harvests, guide kings, and grant armies the favor of victory. But he could also strike down the arrogant with the certainty of thunder. Temples rose, prayers filled the air, and songs praised his name. People sought his favor in war, in love, and in seasons of need. Though feared for his storms, he was also trusted for his justice. For beneath the tales of passion lay Zeus, guardian of order and law. His bond with mortals was not only power, but also protection. In these stories, the hidden face of Zeus appears once again. He was sovereign of Olympus, but also a being who longed for connection. His ties with humans revealed his vulnerabilities as much as his strength. Desire, curiosity, and tenderness marked a side apart from the thunderbolt. Perhaps this is why these tales endure across time and memory. They remind us that the divine and the human are never apart. The struggles, joys, and mistakes of Zeus mirrored those of humankind. In loving and erring, Zeus was not only God but human reflection. As we leave behind these mortal threads, one truth remains clear. The hidden face of Zeus lives not only in storms above, it lingers in the quiet lives he touched below. Unforgettable and eternal. Among the many tales that cast shadows on Zeus's throne, none shines brighter than the story of Prometheus. This titan was no ordinary being, clever, sharp of mind, and deeply sympathetic to mortals. Where other gods saw weakness in humans, Prometheus saw potential waiting to be awakened. In the early days, mortals lived in darkness, without warmth, knowledge, or the spark of fire. Zeus guarded fire as divine power, too dangerous to place in mortal hands. But Prometheus saw their suffering and believed denying fire was denying their chance to rise. He stole a hidden ember, carrying it in a fennel stalk, and gave it to mankind. With fire, humans learned to cook, forge metal, and build tools that shaped civilizations. They no longer lived as fragile creatures of the night, they became creators and dreamers. Zeus, however, did not see kindness in this act, only defiance of his authority. To him, the theft was not just bold, it was an insult to the order of the cosmos. Mortals rejoiced in their new strength, but with fire came ambition and endless striving. Zeus punished Prometheus, not merely out of wrath, but to set boundaries between worlds. His justice reminded mortals and immortals that power always carries a heavy cost. Here, we glimpse a hidden face of Zeus, tyrant to some, guardian to others. Prometheus became a symbol of resistance, Zeus a symbol of order and restraint. Together, they embody the paradox between freedom and authority, ambition and balance. For mortals, the tale was not just about Prometheus, it was about themselves. It asked, what is the price of knowledge and the cost of defiance? Fire gave them strength, yet tied them forever to Zeus's watchful gaze. The story lingers as a mirror of rulers, innovators, and the risks of power. Zeus's justice, harsh though it seemed, held reason within its thunder. For in the stolen fire burned both creation and destruction, light and shadow alike. It is a lesson never forgotten. Every gift holds its danger, every flame its dark. Hera was not only Zeus's wife, but the queen of Olympus, a goddess whose presence could bless with grace or strike with fury. She ruled as the protector of women in marriages, the guardian of sacred vows, and the watchful force behind love and loyalty. Mortals revered her and feared her. To earn her favor meant protection, but to anger her meant misfortune beyond escape. Her temples rose across Greece, symbols of devotion to her power and reminders of her influence in mortal lives. Yet her bond with Zeus brought tension, for the king of gods was never faithful to a single love. Zeus's countless affairs, with goddesses and mortals alike, stirred Hera's wrath and revealed her fiery strength. Stories often paint Hera as jealous and unforgiving, but beneath her fury was a defense of sacred vows. Her anger was not simple spite, but justice, a demand for loyalty in the face of Zeus's endless betrayals. One tale tells of Io, a mortal Zeus desired. To hide her, he turned her into a cow. But Hera saw the truth. She claimed Io as her own and placed her under guard, proving that no disguise could escape her piercing gaze. Mortals learned from this tale that truth cannot be hidden, and betrayal never goes unseen under Hera's watch. Yet Hera was not only wrathful, she could be kind and protective when honored with true devotion. Cities thrived under her blessing, marriages stood strong, and women found courage in her divine presence. Hera's dual nature, fierce in betrayal, gentle in loyalty, reflected the complexities of human love and union. Through her, the hidden face of Zeus is revealed, showing that even his vast power met resistance. In Hera, Zeus faced both a partner and a rival, a queen who demanded respect and balance on Olympus. Their union was storm and fire, thunder and resolve, a balance that mirrored mortal struggles with love and trust. Through their quarrels, mortals saw themselves, torn between devotion and betrayal, anger and forgiveness. Hera's voice reminded the world that even the king of gods was bound by promises, even when he broke them. She became not just Zeus's counterpart, but his conscience, holding him to account with fierce, unyielding power. In her, the cost of desire without duty was laid bare, a mirror to both gods and mortals alike. Hera's strength shaped Olympus itself, proving that power was not only thunder, but also the vows we honor. Her story endures as a forceful reminder. Loyalty and truth are divine powers, equal to lightning in the sky. Prometheus was unlike the other titans, for he carried not only strength, but a rare compassion for mortals. He saw humanity not as pawns or worshippers, but as fragile sparks waiting for light. Zeus, however, looked upon mortals with distance, expecting loyalty and sacrifice, but never growth. The clash between them was born from vision, not hatred. Control on one side, freedom on the other. At the heart of their conflict was fire, a gift greater than any treasure of Olympus. To mortals, fire meant more than warmth. It was creation, knowledge, and the courage to defy darkness. Zeus feared this gift, believing it would tilt the balance between gods and men. Prometheus ignored the command and carried fire down to earth, hidden within a fennel stalk. When mortals first held fire, their lives changed. They cooked, built, and pushed back the endless night. With fire came hope, but also pride, and mortals began to rise taller under its light. Zeus's fury was swift, for the flame was sacred, not meant to be shared. Yet hidden in his anger was fear, the fear of mortals rising beyond their place. Fear that creation could not be taken back. Once placed in mortal hands, Prometheus suffered for his defiance. Yet his story reflects more than punishment. It reveals Zeus's hidden face, not as tyrant alone, but as protector of fragile order. For if mortals rose too high, Olympus itself might falter. Prometheus saw humanity's potential. Zeus saw the danger it carried, Between them stretched the eternal struggle between freedom and control. This is why the tale endures not only for Prometheus's courage, but for the shadow it cast on Zeus. The ruler of Olympus stood revealed, not only mighty, but afraid of the spark in human hearts. The hidden face of Zeus shines here not in thunder, but in the quiet fear of losing power. Among the threads that shaped Zeus's reign, one was stronger than thunder and older than Olympus itself, fate. Even the king of gods, with lightning in hand, was not free from its grip. The Greeks spoke of the Moirai, 3 sisters who spun, measured, and cut the thread of life. Clotho spun the thread, Lachesis measured it, and Atropos cut it when the time had come. Kings and peasants, heroes and gods, all bowed to them, and so did Zeus. This truth unsettled Olympus. What is power, if even Zeus must bend before it? He often tried to resist fate, twisting its course to protect those he loved or punish enemies. But even Zeus could not overturn destiny. The loom of the fates was untouchable. One tale tells of his son, Sarpedon, fated to die on the battlefield. Zeus longed to save him, to pull him from the jaws of death, but Hera spoke with reason. If he defied fate for one, all order would collapse, and chaos would follow. With sorrow, Zeus allowed the thread to be cut, his thunder silent before destiny. Here we see the hidden face of Zeus, not as ruler, but as a grieving father. He wielded storms, yet in this moment he was powerless. Fate humbled him, showing that even gods live within boundaries. The Greeks saw their own reflection in this truth, walking paths they could not change. Yet Zeus did not only surrender, he sought to weave within the lines of destiny. He fathered heroes, guiding their journeys, shaping the stories of gods and men. Still, he could not protect them from the final cut of Atropos' shears. This struggle between will and inevitability is deeply human. For who among us has not faced forces beyond our control? The hidden face of Zeus here is one of humility, not triumph. He bowed before the eternal laws that bound even the gods. The Greeks imagined their gods not flawless, but mirrors of their own struggles. And so, Zeus endures, thunderous yet humbled, mighty yet bowed to destiny's thread. In him we see that even the greatest must one day surrender. Among the mysteries that surrounded Zeus, prophecy was perhaps the most unsettling, for even he could not silence the whispers of fate. The Greeks believed the future was never fully hidden. It spoke through oracles, sacred springs, and visions carried by those touched by divine sight. Though he ruled Olympus, Zeus feared prophecy. It carried truths that no thunderbolt could destroy, and no cloud could conceal. Long before he became king, a prophecy declared that Zeus would overthrow Cronus. That vision came true, shaping both his destiny and his fear. For from that moment, Zeus lived with a shadow, the warning that one of his own children might rise against him. This fear drove him to watch oracles closely. At Dodona, even the rustling leaves of the sacred oak were believed to speak with divine voices. Zeus bent fate to his will where he could, silencing some visions, demanding clarity, trying to contain what could not be bound. But prophecy was untamable. It drifted like smoke, slipping through his grasp, returning with riddles and warnings he could never escape. The tale of Thetis revealed this fear most clearly. Prophecy said her son would be greater than his father. Zeus desired her, yet when he heard this truth, he withdrew, choosing not to risk his own downfall. Instead, Thetis married the mortal Peleus. From their union came Achilles, a hero whose name would echo through time. Here we glimpse the hidden face of Zeus, not only ruler of gods, but a being haunted by dread of what fate might bring. Prophecy guided him, yet also chained him, leaving him both powerful and vulnerable in its grip. The Greeks saw in this struggle their own reflection, for to know the future is both gift and burden. Clarity comes with a heavy weight, and each decision feels shaped by shadows of what may come. Zeus's fear revealed his humanity. What greater terror exists than the thought of being undone by one's own blood? Yet he also showed wisdom. He learned not to fight every prophecy, sometimes letting fate unfold without resistance. This balance made him more than a tyrant. It gave him depth, a figure both mighty and flawed, ruler yet prisoner of destiny. The hidden face of Zeus in prophecy is the face of us all. Rulers, dreamers, parents who fear the unknown of tomorrow. He trembled, yet listened. He feared, yet learned. And in that, the Greeks found a mirror of their own hearts. Justice, in the world of gods and men, was never simple, and at the heart of this balance stood Zeus, holding the scales of divine order. To the Greeks, Zeus was not only the wielder of thunderbolts, but the guardian of justice, protector of oaths, and ultimate judge of both gods and mortals. Justice was never clear or easy. It demanded wisdom, patience, and often mercy, for rules alone could not capture the true weight of right and wrong. Stories say Zeus punished those who broke sacred oaths, for to betray one's word was not a small act, but a wound to the very fabric of cosmic order. Oaths bound communities together, created trust among people, and wove the fabric of human life. So Zeus defended their power with thunder and law. Zeus was also protector of guests and strangers, honored as Zeus Xenios, making hospitality a sacred duty that carried divine weight. To mistreat a guest was no small crime. It was an insult against Zeus himself, a failure of both kindness and justice. Myths often tested kings and heroes by how they treated the vulnerable, for hospitality was not just courtesy but sacred law. But Zeus's justice was not always harsh. Sometimes he showed mercy, sparing those who erred from ignorance or desperation, balancing fairness with compassion. Even among the gods, Zeus served as judge. Disputes in Olympus often fell to him, requiring patience, wisdom, and the authority to hold peace. Beside him sat Dike, goddess of moral order, imagined as recording mortal deeds and guiding Zeus in his role as keeper of balance. Justice was never perfect, not even for Zeus. He sometimes bent rules, favored children, or let desire shape judgment, showing a deeply human flaw. The Greeks saw this imperfection as reflection of life, where laws were written but interpretation was messy, and leaders made choices both wise and weak. Through Zeus, justice became alive, a force protecting the weak, punishing the deceitful, and giving hope to those who sought fairness. But the hidden face of Zeus in justice was not about perfection. It was about balance between mercy and punishment, kindness and severity. Too much mercy could weaken order, while too much punishment could crush compassion. Justice required walking the narrow path between extremes. This was the Zeus they imagined, not flawless, but striving, not always fair, but always carrying the burden of responsibility. Greek courts and assemblies echoed his role, swearing oaths in his name, believing verdicts carried his unseen presence and judgment. Mortals found comfort, knowing even gods struggled with justice, but also caution, for every act carried consequence under Zeus's watch. The hidden face of Zeus in justice lived not in marble or law, but in the delicate choices that shaped lives of gods and men. As Greek myths echo through time, one figure remains at their center. Zeus, king of the gods, lord of the sky, and guardian of order. The Greeks saw more than thunder in Zeus. They saw leadership, justice, prophecy, and the fragile balance between power and compassion. Zeus was not a distant god carved from marble. He lived in every oath, every guest welcomed, and every storm rolling across the land. His legacy is many-sided, stern yet merciful, feared yet honored, flawed yet eternal. A ruler of Olympus, but also a presence in mortal life. One hidden face was his humanity. For all his power, Zeus feared betrayal, carried burdens, and dreaded the grip of fate. In him, mortals saw themselves struggles, fears, and desires magnified through the lens of divine rule. Another hidden face was harmony. Zeus was not only a stormbringer, but also a guardian holding chaos back with thunder and law. His myths shaped centuries. People saw justice, law, and the weight of power through the stories of the thunder-wielding king. When oaths are sworn today, or justice invoked, echoes of Zeus remain. His shadow still touches the language of duty and law. Zeus's legacy is complexity. He was not flawless, yet his imperfection gave his myths truth and power across generations. He was a god who feared prophecy, but learned from it. A ruler who punished, but also forgave. A leader who demanded respect, but carried responsibility. The Greeks heard not just wrath in thunder, but presence. A reminder that power carries not only strength, but justice and restraint. Zeus's story leaves questions. What does it mean to rule? To hold power? To fear the future, yet still shape it with choice? His hidden face is a mirror of humanity, showing the endless search for balance between mercy and justice, hope and fear. The legacy of Zeus endures not through perfection, but through struggle, contradiction, and the fragile dance of leadership. He was remembered not for being flawless, but for being powerful, human, and eternal in myth. And so his hidden face is revealed, thunderous and silent, feared and honored, eternal in the stories that still echo today.